We're continuing the principle of vibration. And it says, modern science has proven that all we call matter and energy are but modes of vibratory motion. And some of the more advanced scientists are rapidly moving toward the positions of the opposites who hold that the phenomena of mind are likewise modes of vibration or motion. So, in the principle of mentalism, we see that the all is mind. Greetings, Kali. The all is mind, and the mind is made up of vibration and motion. Okay. Hey, how she trades. Let's see what science has to say regarding the question of vibrations in matter and energy. In the first place, science teaches that all matter manifests in some degree. The vibrations arising from temperature or heat, be an object cold or hot, both being degrees of the same thing, it manifests heat vibrations, and in that sense is in motion and vibration. Then all particles of matter are in circular movement from corpuscles to suns. The planets revolve around the suns, and many of them turn on their axis. The suns move around greater central points, and these are believed to move around still greater, and so on. The molecules of which the particular kinds of matter are composed are in a state of constant vibration and movement around each other and against each other. The molecules are composed of atoms, which likewise are in a state of constant movement and vibration. The atoms are composed of electrons or ions, etc., which are also in a state of rapid motion. So we see here we have the what we are normally saying the microcosm of the macrocosm. We have the solar system where the planets are said to revolve around the sun. They spin on their axis, and then the sun travels around the solar system with the planets following behind. And then it just expands outward. When we look inward, we see that atoms are composed of ions, whatever we call them, protons, electrons, neutrons, that circle in the same way. So that's really what this is pointing out. The atoms are composed of ions, etc., which are in a state of rapid motion, revolving around each other, and which manifest a very rapid state and mode of vibration. And so we see that all forms of matter manifest vibration in accordance with the Hermetic principle of vibration. Okay, so now let's take it into the realm of energy. And so it is, hey, how she trades. And so it is with the various forms of energy. Science teaches that light, heat, magnetism, and electricity are but forms of vibratory motion, connected in some way with and probably emanating from ether. Science does not yet attempt to explain the nature of the phenomena known as cohesion, which is the principle of molecular attraction, nor do they understand chemical affinity, which is the principle of atomic attraction, nor gravitation, which is the greatest mystery of the three, which is the principle of attraction by which every particle or mass of matter is bound to every other particle or mass. These three forms of energy are as not yet understood by scientists, yet the writers incline to the opinion that these two are manifestations of the same vibratory energy, a fact which Hermeticists, why do I want to say that? Hermetists have held and taught for ages. Let's talk about the universal ether. The universal ether, which is postulated by science, without its nature being understood clearly, is held by the Hermetists to be but a higher manifestation of that which is erroneously called matter. That is to say, matter at a higher degree of vibration, and is called by them the ethereal substance. So the ethers are not matter, is called by them the ethereal substance. So the ethers are not matter, are not matter. Let me know when I'm back, y'all. Let me know when I'm back, please. Okay, good. So the ether is not matter. It's a higher vibration of matter. It's a higher degree of vibration called the ethereal substance. The Hermetists teach that this ethereal substance is of extreme tenuity and elasticity and pervades universal space, serving as a medium of transmission of the waves of vibratory energy, such as heat, okay, such as heat, light, electricity, and magnetism. The teachings are that the ethereal substance is a connecting link between the forms of vibratory energy known as matter on one hand and energy or force on the other, and also that it manifests a degree of vibration in rate, mode, and a mode entirely of its own. Okay, so when we're talking about ether, we're talking about what the connective aspect that we can't see, but is very real. It connects thing to thing. It is a medium of transmission of waves, light, frequency, magnetism, electricity, and such. Scientists have offered the illustration. So here's an analogy, and I want y'all to plug into this analogy because I find it to be very informative, okay, and insightful. Scientists have offered the illustration of a rapidly moving wheel, a top or cylinder, to show the effects of increasing rates of vibration. Pay attention here. How does a vibration give off other emanations of vibration? Okay. It just sounded like somebody was outside. Maybe they were delivering something. Scientists have offered the illustration of a rapidly moving wheel, top, or cylinder to show the effects of increasing rates of vibration. The illustration supposes that a wheel, top, or revolving cylinder running at a low rate of speed, we will call this revolving thing the object. So there's an object spinning. In the following out of this illustration, let us suppose that the object is moving slowly. It may be seen readily, but no sound of its movement reaches the ear. The speed is gradually increased. In a few moments, its movement becomes so rapid that a deep growl or a low note may be heard. Then, as the rate is increased, the note rises one in the musical scale. Then, the motion being still further increased, the next highest note is distinguished. Then, one after another, all the notes of the musical scale appear, rising higher and higher as the motion is increased. Finally, when the motions have reached a certain rate, the final note perceptible to human ears is reached, and the shrill piercing shriek dies away and silence follows. No sound is heard from the revolving object, the rate of motion being so high that the human ear cannot register the vibrations. Then comes the perception of rising degrees of heat. So let's stop right there. So we have a spinning top of vibration, producing other vibrations as it rapidly increases. And then it will increase until notes on the scale are reached. And then it will go beyond human perception. We will no longer hear it. We will think it's not making any sound, but it is. Did that make sense? It's good enough to know this, but let's apply it. Okay? Somebody give me an application of that. Because the analogy is there to teach us about vibration and our existence so that we can become masterful. So I'm going to ask someone to give me an application of it, like living out. How do we live this out? How is this beneficial to our living? How can we apply this? Because that's what we're here for. We're here to think about how to apply this. It's one thing to know it. It's another thing to live it out, remember, through practice. And then it's another thing to become it. Hey, Penny. Okay, I'm going to continue reading. So whenever I'm giving you something like this, I want you to think about how you can apply it. Okay, all right, good deal. And anybody else feel free to continuing to vibrate on the frequency toward growth and mastery until it's autonomous. Another thing that comes to mind is you continue to increase your vibration. Some people don't know what you're saying. They can't hear or perceive you properly. We're looking for application here. So we have a thing that's vibrating at a certain rate. We can hear it. And then changes start happening. And then it gets so loud until it's piercing to the ear. You can't stand it. And if it continues to vibrate, after a while, you won't hear it anymore. Okay. So transcending into new realities, dimensions, depths, which may be further than others. It helps us understand how this is happening, right? Okay, and I'm open to more. Y'all can continue to type if you're thinking about it. So let's move on to another analogy. Then comes the perception of rising degrees of heat. Then after quite a time, the eye catches a glimpse of the object becoming a dull, dark, reddish color. As the rate increases, the red becomes brighter. As the speed is increased, the red melts into an orange. Then the orange melts into yellow. Then follow successively the shades of green, blue, indigo, and finally violet as the rate of speed increases. Then the violet shades away and all color disappears, the human eye not being able to register them. Our senses are limited. That's another application. You think that what you know is all there is. You prioritize being right, but there are vibrations beyond where you are, and you won't be able to perceive them, right? Yes. The higher you vibrate, the higher your perceptive abilities. But the lower you vibrate, the less available higher planes are to you, the less intelligible they are. I told y'all, sometimes I'm teaching and my teachings hit a person a certain way and they will feel offended because I've said something that doesn't operate on the level that they're on, right? And they get offended and get upset. So the history is they'll go away, block me, and get upset and talk about it, and then come back years later and say, you know, when you said X, Y, and Z, I didn't like it back at that time. I wasn't ready, but now I see, you know. Frequencies can be beyond your senses, beyond what you can see, beyond what you can hear. So if you know that there are planes of existence that exist beyond where you and I are you going to shut down and clinch to what you know already? Are you going to allow your ego to tell you you're right and other people are wrong, and you contract and not remain open, and you run away in fear and do all of these things? Or are you going to say, hey, let me see what's here for me? Because there's something beyond my senses, something beyond my ego that I might need. So let me listen. If you realize that there are frequencies, information, vibrations beyond where you are, then you would become a better listener. Then you would become a better student. Then you would become more open in your own life to the people around you, because you're ever listening to the new thing. You're not listening for what you already resonate with. You're not listening because you want to say me too or disagree. You're listening for that vibration that you couldn't hear before. You know that there's more, so you listen for it. Is that making sense? We're talking about application. You know that there is more. People who focus on knowledge, they allow their ego to tell them that there isn't more. And so then they live like it. They block information, they tussle with information, they fight with information. They find it difficult to listen to people. They're in a hurry to resonate and also in a hurry to disagree at the slightest shift of energy or frequency. Hey, Claire. Hey, Authentic. But if we know that there's more, then we never get to a point where we think we have arrived. We're always listening, always taking in information, always being in a wonder rather than I know, right? The ego is I know, but the higher self requires that we be open, right? And I was making a post earlier today, and I said, sometimes I think age does matter, but many more times I realize it's not age that really matters, it's depth and openness that really matters. Because you can have a younger person or an older person who have no depth because they reside on a certain plane, or they have no openness because they prioritize knowledge, agreement, disagreeing, and all of that stuff. So that's what matters more. Because you can have a really nice conversation with an open person who is younger or older, but you can have a very hard conversation with someone who's younger and older. So that tells me the age is not really it. And some people would say, well, experience is it. I don't think that's it either, because with levels of openness, you can explore things that you've never experienced before, right? So it doesn't matter young or old, it matters depth and openness from how I see it. Because if you're not open, then you can't transcend your current plane. And if you already don't have depth, then there's so many things that you can't see or hear. So you dwell on sides and you become adversarial and defensive and knowledgeable, right? But we're being called in the season. And let me add this. We have a Leo stellium in the sky, right? The sun is in Leo, Mercury is in Leo, Jupiter is in Leo, Pluto is in Aquarius, which is the mirror of Leo, opposing Leo. And so we have a lot of themes currently in our current atmosphere around ego and proper placement of it, and tearing down to build up, transcending the ego. These are common themes, okay? So let's continue. Then the violet shades away and all color disappears, the human eye not being able to register them, but they still exist. But there are invisible rays emanating from the revolving object, the rays that are used in photographing and other subtle rays of light, then begin to manifest the peculiar rays known as X-rays, etc. As the constitution of the object changes. Electricity and magnetism are emitted when the appropriate rate of vibration is attained. When the object reaches a certain rate of vibration, its molecules disintegrate, resolve themselves into the original elements or atoms. Then the atoms, following the principle of vibration, are separated into the countless corpuscles of which they are composed, and finally, even the corpuscles disappear, and the object may be said to be composed of ethereal substance. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about ethers and we're talking about ethereal substance. We're talking about the substance, the medium, where the vibration is so high that it's beyond matter. Okay? Science does not dare to follow the illustrations further, but the Hermetics teach that if vibrations be continually increased, the object would mount up the successive rates of manifestation and would in turn manifest the various mental stages. The substance of things not seen, yes. And then I think that's a beautiful statement how she trades, because that's faith, right? So we could put faith on this vibratory scale and see that it's the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Yeah, so right now we're going even beyond self-actualization, because the self-actualization process happens psychologically, right? But right now we're on the planes of existence. We're in the energetic field now. Things not seen have substance, yes. And we think that if we can't see it, it's not real or it's not there. But it's only not there because we don't have the ability through the senses to perceive it. And that could go a long way in preach. If something is in the ethereal realm, it has such a high vibration that you can't perceive it. It would have to devolve or lower in vibration on the level of the senses so you can actually see it or feel it or hear it, right? So I like that you brought that up. And it's saying right here, right. It's saying right here, if the thing vibrates high enough, it would then manifest the various mental stages and then on spirit word until it would finally re-enter the all, which is absolute spirit. So we're following faith past the ethereal substance. Beyond the ethereal substance, it says, if you continue to increase the vibration, that it would manifest mental stages. I believe faith is in that category. And then spirit on spirit word until it would finally re-enter the all. We aim to bring the unseen into the seen. Yes. Or the higher vibrations into the lower. That's what we're calling manifestation, right? We need to bring some unseen, unsensed reality into the seen and felt realm. Yes, materialize into our view. Let's continue. The spinning object or the vibratory object. Hey, AJ, what's up? however, would have ceased to be an object by this time, long before the stage of the ethereal substance was reached. But otherwise, the illustration is correct in so as much as it shows the effect of constantly increased rates and modes of vibration. It must be remembered in the above illustration that at the stages which the object throws off vibrations of light, heat, etc., it is not actually resolved into these forms, but simply that it reaches a degree of vibration in which those forms of energy are liberated. Those forms of energy are released from it. It's not being turned into heat. Does it have an illustration? No. They're talking about the verbal illustration, the analogy. Okay. So those forms of energy are liberated in degree from the confining influences of its molecules, atoms, and corpuscles, as the case may be. These forms of energy, although much higher on the scale than matter, are imprisoned and confined in material combinations. Stop and think about this. Stop and think about this. We just said that if you increase the vibration of the object high enough, it would go beyond color, it would go beyond heat, it would go beyond light, it would become something ethereal, and then it would go spiritward into mental states and finally back into the all. That's what would happen. And so it says right here, these forms of energy, although much higher in the scale than matter, are imprisoned and confined in material combinations by reasons of the energies manifesting through and using material forms, but thus becoming entangled and confined in their creations of material forms, which to an extent is true of all creations, the creating force becoming involved in its creation. So these non-material, non-matter vibrations are inside or confined by matter. Are y'all taking that in? Like, is it doing something mentally? Is it doing something spiritually? If you take something and you increase the vibration, it will go through you follow. Yeah. It's not just light. It's not just heat. It's actually the all confined in matter. And everything. Because if you increase the vibration of any and everything, based upon this teaching, the same thing is going to happen. But the Hermetic teachings go much further than those of modern science. They teach that all manifestation of thought, it's us. And what us? The ego us? No. The Ba, the spark, the divine essence, the essence of us. Yes. All manifestation of thought, emotion, reason, will, or desire, or any mental state or condition are accompanied by vibrations, a portion of which are thrown off and which tend to affect the minds of other persons by induction. So did you hear that also? So we're going beyond the psychology of things. They're even saying they're going beyond the physics and the chemistry of things. They're going beyond where science would stop. Science would stop before the ethereal substance. But the Hermetists, the esoteric students, go beyond that, right? So They teach, they're saying now, based upon what we just talked about, all manifestation of thought, emotion, reason, will, desire, or any mental state or condition are accompanied by vibrations, a portion of which are thrown off and which tend to affect the minds of other persons by induction. So let's look up the word induction so we can really take this in. Y'all tracking? Induction means the act of bringing something about, introducing someone to, reasoning from specific facts to a general rule. It's an introduction. Okay. In physics, it's the process where electrical current or a magnetic field is produced in an object by a nearby charged object or varying magnetic field without direct contact. Every and all manifestations of thought, a portion of which is released and can affect other people. Every manifestation of emotion is a vibration, and a portion of that is thrown off and can affect the minds of other people. Every manifestation of reason can, every manifestation of will can, every desire or mental states, Taylor, and or conditions, any and all of that are thrown off and tend to affect the minds of other persons by induction. That reminds me of the tuning fork, right? So if the tuning fork is compatible, then you can have two tuning forks and you can strike one and the other will vibrate on that same note. So let's continue. This is the principle which produces the phenomena of telepathy, mental influence, and all other forms of the action and power of mind over mind, with which the general public is rapidly becoming acquainted, owing to the wise dissemination of occult knowledge by various schools, cults, and teachers along these lines at the time. Every thought, emotion, or mental state has its corresponding rate and mode of vibration, and by effort of the will of the person or other persons, these mental states may be reproduced just as a musical tone may be reproduced by causing an instrument to vibrate at a certain rate, just as a color may be reproduced in the same way. By a knowledge of the principle of vibration as applied to mental phenomena, one may polarize his mind at any degree he wishes, thus gaining a perfect control over his mental states, moods, and etc. In the same way, he may affect the minds of others, producing the desired mental states in them. In short, he may be able to produce on the mental plane that which science produces on the physical plane, namely vibrations at will. This power, of course, may be acquired only by proper instruction, exercises, practice, etc., the science being that of mental transmutation, one of the branches of the Hermetic art. So I want y'all to remember that we have different planes here. So we have the physical plane, which is the plane of the body and all matter. And then we have those subplanes, right? And then you have the mental plane, which we could call the psychological plane, and the metaphysical realm. And then we have the realm of energy, and then we have the realm of spirit. So what we were just talking about is the process of vibrating something from the physical realm all the way up through spirit. And then there's an opposite process of bringing down the things that vibrate on the level of spirit all the way down into the seen, felt, sensory realm. And it just said, now that we have worked that out, now that we understand a little more deeply this principle of vibration, let's bring it back to the mental realm. You can polarize yourself and you can polarize others, and it's fair to say from that, you can be polarized. And that's why it's important to think critically about the things that you're watching and the people you're talking to, the things that you're taking in. Everything that polarizes you needs to be assessed. Now, if the polarization is happening to your benefit and is causing you to feel inspired and such, then okay, that's a polarization that increases the vibration. But some polarization will decrease your vibration. Yes or no? Do y'all see that? Hey, Danny, thank you. Sometimes what is traveling through the currents, sometimes what is traveling through the currents is a deliberate attempt to polarize you to a lower vibration. That's why we're going through all of these Hermetic principles so we can become masterful at polarizing self, increasing vibration, and moving beyond the control of that. Yeah. So we see this happening in the media. We see this happening in the news. We see this happening on TV shows. We see this happening in the recurring themes in the collective. Oh, okay. Do you want to come up and talk about that? I would love to hear it. So what they're saying is spiritual, energetic, and mental telepathy, influence happens. And you could say that it doesn't. You can say, I'm protected. No, it doesn't. The law is the law. Now, you can use other laws to safeguard yourself, but what you're saying is the law doesn't work for me, and we know that's a lie because universal laws permeate and correspond with every plane of existence and vibration. And when we look on this physical realm, it doesn't matter what your religious system is. It doesn't matter what your culture is or your location, because these universal laws are infinite and run in and through everything. Right. No one is above the program, but there's some people who think they are. Now, you can use laws, higher laws, against lower laws to stop that from happening. Yes. But if you're just in existence in denial, then you're just being programmed. You need a higher law, Ashe. That's why we're studying it, you know? Are y'all still present? I'm going to read a little bit more and then I'm going to end. To overcome gravity. Yeah, it is. Okay, I'm going to read this last paragraph here. A little reflection, and let me stop and say this. This is why when I mention the Kybalion, and people go, oh yeah, I read that. Oh yeah, I read that. But they're still living a particular way and doing particular things. I know they didn't read it. They probably got online and read the summary of the principles. Because the summary of the principles, they don't go into mental transmutation and alchemy. They just list the summary or the axioms of the principle. They didn't even read it, how she trades, because what they read was the axiom. And then they said, yeah, I understand what that means. As above, so below. As below, so as within, so without. Not even correctly quoting it. So they didn't read the Kybalion. They read the summaries. or they scanned. Because you see, like, to do this, you have to apply thought and you have to apply application. So I suggest that everyone reads it or listens to a reading, but make sure the person is reading from it and not one of the commentaries. Anybody who just cavalierly says, "Oh yes, I read the Kybalion," I'd be like, "Nah, you didn't read it." And I mean literally, you didn't read it. Because if you did, there would be a very real and profound difference in the way you see the world. It's life-changing. Now, maybe they read a little part of it and they got a bit because they weren't ready for the rest of it, and that's okay too. Taylor, it's called the Kybalion, Kybalion. So let me tell y'all how I came upon this before I move into the last paragraph. I had a friend one day, and this was right before the pandemic. On a voice note, he started reading something to me. At that time, I didn't know it was the Kybalion. And I was like, oh, it would cause some induction, right? So if there was no induction, then that person is prioritizing knowledge to say, I read it. The induction must happen, right? You start vibrating different. You start thinking different. You start seeing different. Even if you can't make immediate changes, your mental plane is expanded right away, right? So he was reading it on a voice note, and I was like, what is that? Oh my God, what is that? Now, he didn't even go through the whole Kybalion. He read the principal part, the part that's in the introduction that I did. I couldn't not have that in my possession. It changed my whole entire world. Okay, and it continues to change my world because every time I read it, every time I teach from it, I expand. So this is good for me too. Okay. A little reflection on what we have said will show the student that the principle of vibration underlies the wonderful phenomena of the power manifested by the masters and adepts who are able to apparently set aside the laws of nature, but who in reality are simply using one law against another, one principle against others, and who accomplish their results by changing the vibration of material objects or forms of energy, and thus perform what are commonly called miracles. So, with this information, it's saying the student, not the person who knows it, because you can know something and not be a student of something. Yes? The student and the adepts, those that practice this, it seems like they are directing nature. It seems like they're doing these profound things on their own. But what they're really doing is using a higher law against a lower, one principle against others. And this is what we call bringing about miracles. As one of the old Hermetic writers has truly said, he who understands the principle of vibration has grasped the scepter of power. And that's it. So when we come back, no, I started polarity last night, but it was good to revisit what I just read again. So I will come back either tonight or tomorrow and we'll get into magic, right? We'll get into the principle of polarity. You see how we just went back over the principle of vibration and it was like brand new? You know, so this happens every time we read it. I could read the same thing tomorrow and we would get more things from it. That's how rich it is. That's how high vibration it is. Ashe. So I'm done. I was reading from the Kybalion. If you want previous readings, you can get them from my YouTube at Coach Veronica Marie. Thank y'all so much for hanging out. Ashe. This is empowerment. This is a way to sit back in your power seat as the divine. This is another way to heal, right? I always say healing, and I like the word harmonizing rather than healing. There are more ways to harmonize the self than inner child work. You need more. There are more ways to harmonize the self than work through trauma and psychology. That's beautiful, and we need that. There's more. And there's even more than this, right? Imagine that. And so, as we're on our journey of harmonizing, I want you to remember that all harmonizing, all healing does not involve pain. Some of it involves receiving wisdom or induction or the activation of a gnosis inside of you such that you begin living differently because you begin to see differently. And that high vibration can go back and clear past, present, and future things that need to be harmonized. Do you see that? So yes, we do need to talk about things that happen to us, absolutely. But at some point you will loop and you will keep doing that. And you will wonder, does this ever end? I'm so tired of healing. I'm so exhausted. Or someone else will say, I did that already. I healed already. And then both of those people are limited. All right, plane. I don't know what name to call you. I just see an airplane and some symbols, but much gratitude to you too. At some point, your soul begins to say, there's more than this. And there is. Increasing your vibration can involve rectifying traumatic experiences. It also requires you, because some people get stuck on that level. They keep soothing an inner child. They keep ministering to the inner child. And then you have to ask, when does your inner child grow up after all the work that you're doing? You're still having the same responses and you're still feeling the same ways about them. We need that. And we need this. You need to know universal principles. You need to know the associated laws. You need to understand how this reality works so that you can go beyond just the law of attraction. I keep saying that because that's what everybody latches onto. The law of attraction, the law of attraction, the law of attraction. There's more. And there's more planes of existence and more ways the law of attraction works. We just read that example of how you can start burning something and increasing the vibration until it's not even atoms and it's no longer electrons and stuff. It's spiritual, and then it's part of the all. We just saw how increasing vibration could do that to matter. It could do that to us too. So if you've been healing through trauma, keep doing that. But you need more than that. I'm here to tell you. I coach people all week long. I'm an emotional wellness coach and a spiritual coach. I coach people all week long. And every person gets to a point where psychology cannot help. Every person does. Right? Now, that doesn't happen because you took, hey, Vibranium, that doesn't happen because you attended therapy 12 times or you attended therapy for a year or whatever. It comes because your soul says there's more. It doesn't come because you don't feel like doing the inner child work or you're trying to bypass it to go faster or something. That's not what this is. You know, if you're on here and you've experienced it, and Taylor, yeah, how she trades, you're saying the same thing. You know, you get to a point where you need more than that. And even, hold on, let me do this puzzle thing. And even in the Kybalion, it says that the Hermetists, they dare to go beyond science. They dare to go beyond psychology. That's where we're at. We're in the beyond. There's more. Okay? And I want to leave you with that so that you have openness to more. Your soul is asking for the more. Don't you know you can rectify all your inner child stuff and still vibrate low? You might vibrate higher than you did when you were needing to do the work, but you'll still sense the low vibration because you'll feel restless. You'll feel stuck. You'll feel like I'm searching for something. So inner child work is great. It's not the end all be all. You can heal from your family trauma. You can heal from generational trauma and racial trauma. And there's still going to be a feeling inside of you like, okay, I'm doing that. And what else? Do I keep going through this over and over and over again? Do I have to keep repeating this cycle? Sometimes you do. But also, always, you need to know these things that we're talking about. So let me know if that makes sense. You need to get on the energetic plane. It's still in your oscillation range, absolutely. If we put it in the form of yogic philosophy, it's still Manamaya, right? It's still Manamaya. Now we need to ascend through the Manamaya. That's the transcending process. So we need to process through it. But the Manomaya is the Manomaya, the realm of the ego. It never is the realm of wisdom. So if that's still in your frequency and you're there, wisdom it doesn't make sense to you. It's not intelligible. So that's why you got to wait until you increase your vibration a little bit more so you can hear more. You ever, hold on one second. Thank you, Taylor. You ever felt like, okay, yeah, I'm getting better. I've healed this. I've healed that. I've worked through this. I'm getting better. And then something else comes up out of your soul and you go, dang, I thought I handled that. Now there's more. There's always more. You needed to hear, you could hear that again? Yes. There's always more, okay? So we need to keep peeling the layers off the onions and go deeper within ourselves. Yes. But notice I said deeper within ourselves, not deeper in trauma, not deeper in psychological concepts. What self am I talking about? Well, remember in Hermetic spirituality, we talked about the Ba, that's deeper. In yogic philosophy, we talked about the koshas, the wisdom sheet, and the bliss body, that. When we talked about briefly Gnostic cosmology, we're talking about the spark. And here, we're talking about all the planes, all the great planes in the subcategories. So you go deeper, higher, wider too. Ashe. Ashe. Okay, and that's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all. Hey Vibes, how you doing? A similar series of challenges come with each level. Yes, because the vibration is higher. So then the challenge may match that, which will increase the vibration. So if you want your vibration to increase, you got to release some of the tethers of the lower planes. Now, real quick, in yoga, we call those samskaras and vrittis, those causes of suffering. The samskaras basically are your patterns, okay, your programming. All of those things that do not resonate with universal truth, you need to shed that. And the vrittis are the thought processes, the modifications of the mind that take you away from truth. Those are the tethers you need to release. So yes, you do need to forgive, yes. But don't you know there's a space beyond forgiveness where even though the thing was done, you don't need forgiveness because you vibrate at a level. Remember in that analogy, the object could vibrate beyond the atoms and the electrons, and it could become something spiritual. In that same way, your vibration can increase such that you don't have to spend time forgiving because that already happens. You don't have to put a lot of energy in it because that happens naturally based upon the way that you see the world. In fact, you often don't form things that need to be forgiven because you see what is going on, and the energy of you and your interpretations and where you dwell within yourself will take care of that naturally. You will bypass the frequency of forgiveness. Let me show you something really quick. I showed you this last night. Let me show it one more time. Okay. I don't think this one has it on here. Let me see. No, it doesn't. Give me 1 second. I need to find one that has forgiveness. So this is a map of consciousness. It's designed to show you where different qualities of your experience dwell on the layers of consciousness. So we see enlightenment as the highest vibration on the physical plane we're talking about. And the lowest here is called shame, right? But on some of the models, there's forgiveness. And forgiveness comes right below courage, if I'm not mistaken. You see, courage is right at the midpoint. Yeah, it helped me too. So listen, imagine that forgiveness is right beneath courage, right? There are higher vibrations that you can be in where you don't have to keep revisiting forgiveness. But you gotta increase the vibration to do it. That comes through revisiting what happened, harmonizing with universal truth, applying it until you become it, and then you will no longer form the same samskaras. Am I making sense? I know I'm saying a lot. Am I making sense? I'm giving you something to aspire to. You don't have to stay in perpetual shadow work. You need to do shadow work. You do. But as you grow through shadow work, you also need this knowledge, spiritual knowledge, energetic knowledge, metaphysical knowledge, beyond the senses. Because remember, there's so much that we can't sense. And most of that is not available to most people. And that's why we sit around in the regular arguments and we debate about the regular things, because the mind is at a certain vibration. Okay, here's an example. When you get around 5-year-olds, their mind is at a 5-year-old vibration, right, doctor? And so they talk about their toys typically. They get upset and say, mine, things like that. And they talk about very fundamental things, 5-year-olds. Now, if you bring a 15-year-old into a group of 5-year-olds, that's going to be a different vibration, right? Yes or no? Follow me. The 15-year-old may even feel like this is too simple. I don't want to be around this. I want to be around some people my own age. But then if you put a 15-year-old in a space with 30-year-olds, that 15-year-old may feel out of place and may be out of place because the mental frameworks, they don't really reach the 15-year-old. And I know somebody sitting there who is very dogmatic, and they're saying, well, 15-year-old can be deep. Just follow what I'm giving you here, because you see the point. Okay, yes, a 5-year-old can have beautiful gnosis and stuff, but I'm talking about the typical 5-year-old. So you can learn a lot about where a person is by listening to the types of conversations they have with people around them.